Hello to everybody watching us live and on demand, and welcome to Wix Talks Trends Next Level Personalization using AI and data to create customer loyalty. And it's so lovely to see everybody already tuning in today. I already know that this is going to be a super lively one. So to kick things off, please could you just pop into the chat and let us know where in the world you're joining us from today. And throughout this conversation, please do keep your thoughts and questions coming, as we'd love to have your input as the conversation unfolds. Today, we're going to have about 40 minutes for the panel discussion, followed by a live audience Q&A. So please keep those questions and comments coming in. Our behind the scenes team will be gathering them up for me, and I'll share as many as I can with our panelists towards the end. So for anyone who doesn't know me or anyone who's new to Women in CX events, I'm Claire Muscat, the founder of Women in CX, the world's first community for women working in customer experience and technology. And our mission is pretty simple. It's to unleash the power of women to lead the movement for human-centered business through content, connection, and conversations just like this one today. And I'm thrilled to be once again partnering with CallMiner, the global leader in AI-powered conversation intelligence, for this very special edition, exploring how we can move beyond the buzzwords and use AI and data to truly deepen customer relationships. And this panel, in fact, is based on the findings of CallMiner's latest CX Trends reports. But if you haven't read it yet, don't worry, we'll be sending a copy to your inbox after the session so you can dive into all of the details in your own time. So before I introduce our incredible panel, please allow me to set the scene for today's discussion by positioning this conversation. And that is that personalization has been a CX buzzword for over a decade now. But in 2025, with AI adoption soaring, are we finally ready to deliver on the promise? AI is becoming central to CX, with 80% of organizations already saying that they're partially implementing it, and 96% of leaders believing it will unlock potential and efficiency. But in reality, 62% admit they don't fully utilize their data, and 42% are still relying on manual processes. And that gap between ambition and execution represents a huge opportunity for CX leaders, and especially for women in CX, to lead the way in demonstrating how AI and data can drive smarter, more human-centered personalization that builds loyalty and business value. And now I'm just going to pop and see if we've got anybody who's starting to say hello in the chat. Oh, yeah, we've got loads of you. I think it's over 250 registered for this one. So we've got Charlotte in North Carolina, Courtney in Maryland, Catalina. Oh, actually just asking if the session will be recorded. Yes, it will. Frederica in Switzerland, Kerry in Austin. Hi, Kerry. We've got Carol in Lisbon, Sapna in Finland, Bridget in Lagos in Nigeria, Vanda from the Netherlands. Oh, so many wonderful women here. Shanda from Rapid City, Kate from London, Alyssa from the Philippines. Oh, you've got the prize for the furthest from me so far today. Nancy's in Texas, Rebecca in Leeds. Wow, Danielle in Scotland, Laura in Manchester, Ria's in India. Samantha in Lincoln, Sharon. Oh, hi, Sharon. It was lovely to see you in Berlin a couple of weeks ago for our own conference. Hannah from Edinburgh, one of our newest members. Wow, I think I could just keep going. There's so many of you. Thank you all for joining in. I've got another question for you in a second as well. And as we'd love to have you, as I said, being involved in this panel, I'd really love to hear from you. And this is just a quick kind of fun question. And it's about when brands personalize your experiences as a customer using data or AI. I want to know, what is your instant gut reaction? So could you please either type creepy if it feels invasive, or cool if you love it when a brand knows what you want? And we'll get the panel started and I'll come back to your answers shortly. So without further ado, please let's introduce our incredible panel. So first up, we've got Carolina Ballmarm, who's the Global Head of Experience Design at H&M. Welcome. We've got Emily Dahl. Hello. Emily Dahl, Principal CX Strategist at the Home Depot.
Hello.
Emily. Siobhan Goodall, Senior Client Executive at Ventrica.
Hello.
And last but very much not least, Katie Packard, who's the Senior Customer Success Director at CallMiner. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing today? Looking fabulous as ever. So rather than me introducing you guys, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourselves, your background, and what interests you most about this topic? So without further ado, I'm going to pick on you first, Carolina, if that's okay, because you're the first person to my right.
Of course. Thank you, Claire. So lovely to be here with all of you. And as Claire mentioned, I'm heading the experience design team at H&M. We are a cross-functional team, focusing, of course, on digital experiences and CX. And the team spans from experience design, concept design, design systems, some operations, and so forth. And what we're trying to do now is shape how H&M shows up in every digital and physical touch point for our customers. And lately, my focus has been on driving how H&M evolves within experience design, right? And moving from a siloed approach towards more cross-functional collaboration and utilizing AI, scalable systems with the design system and so forth to enable both personalization and consistency at a global scale, which is super difficult to do in an enterprise environment.
Yeah, I love that. And I've been a massive fan of your work for years now, so you know that. But I'm so happy to have you with us. And Emily, if you'd like to do the same.
Perfect. Good morning. I guess for those of you in the US, it's good morning. For those of you elsewhere, good afternoon, good day. But I am Emily Dahl. I am the Principal CX Strategist and Journey Ops Lead here at Home Depot. And what that really means is we are spending an inordinate amount of time trying to bring together vast amounts of data to better understand our customers, but also make sure we enable our associates, our employees to make the right choices on behalf of our customers. And so for this topic in particular, I think it's really exciting because AI obviously helps us speed up this process to personalize, but it also is an opportunity for us to, especially in the journey ops world, think about how do we build in context? How do we make sure we're thinking not only about all of that quantitative data we collect about our customers, but bringing in that emotional piece, that empathy, and make it hopefully cool and not creepy.
Yeah, and I'm just like watching all the comments coming in. There's some definite creepies, there's some definite calls, but there's a lot of creepy calls. I really like what Kate Nightingale said about her experience of her behavioral research, but it really depends on what her relationship to the brand is, which I think is a really important point, isn't it? It'd probably feel quite creepy if some brands were talking to you in a more personalized way than others. Yeah, Samantha White's comment as well. It would be so cool if they got it right, but when it's not, it's just a rubbish experience. Definitely a sentiment that I share as well. And yeah, it's just super nice to see so many people saying hello to each other on the chat as well, saying it's so great that you're here. And yeah, the community getting to hang out, albeit via this platform today. Thank you everyone for sharing your cool, creepy calls. Oh, there's another one, Lorraine Doak. Hi Lorraine, how are you? I just saw that was a really good one. Creepy when I've barely engaged with the company or products. Cool when I've been a long-standing customer. Yeah, that's a really good one. Okay, so next up, Katie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Packard. I am located out in Boston, Massachusetts. I am the Senior Director of Customer Success at CallMiner. I oversee the BPO division of the company. And it's so funny to kind of see all your chats coming through because we actually just spent all of last week at our annual Listen conference talking about exactly this. Is AI going to be a little bit creepy? Is it going to be cool? We got to really sit down with our customers and talk firsthand with them about how they're utilizing the technology, what type of outreaches they want to do to communicate with their customers so that we stay on the cool side and we stay away from the creepy side. So super excited to be here with you all today.
Love that. Thank you. Okay, and last but not least, Siobhan.
Thank you, Claire. Nice to see you all. So a little background on me. I've spent 30 years. Oh my God, I can't believe it's 30 years already in CX, in BPO, and latterly in digital solutions. I live in Yorkshire in the north of England, so it's a great afternoon here. But at the moment, my role is with Ventrica, a BPO in the UK and South Africa, where I'm responsible for taking our existing clients and our new clients on a journey, on a transformational journey. And that may be within the BPO space, it might be within just digital, it may be a combination of both. And you may start off with one and transition into another. So I'm really excited to be here on part of this panel today. I'm particularly interested in how using AI and data can create customer loyalty because it's all about empowerment. It's about empowerment of your agents to give a much more effective outcome to our customers, to our clients' customers. So looking forward to the conversations.
Super. So let's just jump straight in there then, shall we? So the first theme we're going to be discussing today is the reality check, from buzzwords to business value. And that is that, personalization has been one of the most talked about CX strategies for years, literally years. But 62% of leaders are saying that they're not even using their own data effectively. If we've been talking about personalization for over a decade, why are organizations still struggling so hard to deliver it? I'm just like leaving that for dramatic effect for a second. So my first question is, why do you think so many organizations talk about personalized journeys and experiences but struggle to deliver them? And who would like to take that question first?
Well, I guess I can start a little bit here.
Thank you.
So, in the experience I had working in large enterprises like H&M and IKEA and so forth, I genuinely think that most companies and enterprise companies specifically want to deliver personalization. I mean, as you said, Claire, that's the only thing we've been talking about for the last 10 years. But the challenge comes down to three things, and it's structure, system, and speed. So many enterprises work in silos, right? They have a lot of legacy. They have marketing and they have tech and they have design and they have product. They are all working separately on their own agendas. And the legacy systems can't really connect the data and tag the metadata properly, which means that, even with great ambitions, it's not going to happen in real time. You need to change a little bit how you think about your data in order to be able to utilize it for personalization. And then the second part, the cultural side, like a lot of organizations are built around campaign-based delivery, plan, launch, move on, and so on. But AI-driven personalization is continuous. It's a living system. It's not something that, just stops because a campaign stops or something like that. It adapts, it improves, it learns about you. And, personalization is learning about you and making sure that whatever is relevant is delivered to you based on your relevance. And then, there's a technology side where, if the technology isn't there, the ways of working probably aren't. So if we don't fix those three things, we're never going to be able to deliver it. And I think a good example is Nike of getting it right. They're using data from browsing, purchases, wearables to create experiences that actually feel personal. But for most of us, the blocker isn't intent, it's an outdated operating model. So if we want true personalization, we need to have shared ownership, we need to have simpler processes, and we need to have teams that are empowered to move at the speed of the customers and not at the speed of approval or at the speed of a business approval. Yeah.
Ooh, that's the panel done then. I'm finished now. Can you just say the 1, 2, 3 for us again? Because I think that was like super powerful.
I think it's structure, system, and speed.
Structure, system, speed. Yeah, that's a really good takeout. We'll have to get that as a soundbite for after this, because I totally agree. And what's wrong with so many things, I think, in business, isn't it? Particularly when it comes to systems and ways of working that are just outdated with what's happening in terms of the technology capabilities we have. And we haven't really moved on the culture, the change management aspects, and we're bringing in all of this new stuff that's mind-blowing, but it just hasn't quite met in the middle yet. And the old ways of governance and ways of getting things approved and agreed doesn't work when you need to move with such agility and at pace to test, learn, iterate, and get something out there that can deliver real value. Yeah, I was wondering, Emily, do you have anything to add to that from your point?
Yeah, I really wanted to pull in on that thread around relevance, because I think another theme I'm starting to see in different businesses that I've worked with historically when I was in consulting and even just in the market is that this push for AI, this more AI equals more personalization. And I think we are over-indexing collectively on this idea of automation versus relevance, right? And you really hit that point for me where thinking about, we're doing a lot of the what. We're saying like, what should this customer need, but not maybe always the when and how. And providing that context is, I think, really important as we think about personalization truly feeling relevant and less creepy and more cool. Like, this actually matters to me. It's not just that you're hearing me and you're giving me ads because I talked about needing a product 2 hours ago. It's you actually understand why I want this, and you are making sure it's relevant to me in the moment I need it. So I think when we think about the future and how we really break this and think about not just moments of AI, but truly journeys that are AI enhanced, and think about personalization across the journey, we need to start indexing towards that relevance piece. And when I think of an example, a couple of years ago, I was subscribed to a clothing subscription box where once a month, I would get a curated collection of clothing based on my preferences. And they used a really great algorithm to understand what those preferences were. And one of the things I'd requested at one point was a fall jacket, right? That was a casual fall jacket, but I just knew it was missing from my wardrobe. And all the algorithms in the world could not understand, based on just what I input, that fall for me can be very cold. I live in a northern part of the United States, so we can have snow by October. And so when I got a jacket recommendation, it was never going to keep me warm. I was like, this is great and super cute. And it met all of my, I would say, curated needs from a style, but it missed the mark because it was not having relevance to where I lived. And so I think when we think about really moving forward, we got to focus on that relevance.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I picked it up from both of you there about like the shift in thinking we have to have out of these silos. Like marketing's doing this thing, contact centers are doing this thing, and then into journeys. And as I think I'm sure we'll come on to talk about, like, this is like a journey ops thing, isn't it? To be able to do personalization and AI well, you have to have made that transition to a way of thinking and working that follows the customer and their journey, not what the organization wants to achieve from its own KPIs and deliverables point of view. So I think we're talking about like smarter CX strategies, aren't we? And smarter personalization. And Siobhan, I thought I'd come to you to ask a little bit more about how CX leaders can make that business case. So we're spending a lot of money, we know that, on these tools to drive sales, reduce churn using AI. But how can we invest in something that is actually smarter and adds value?
Yeah, so I think we're at Venture as a BPO, we're uniquely positioned, and certainly with my experience, to look at how you're adding value and the principles when you're building a business case for increasing your investment in personalization will always fall into 4 pillars. So you're looking at increasing customer lifetime value, you're looking at reducing customer churn, you're looking at an optimized contact model, and that's optimized from a customer perspective as well as from a operational perspective too, but ultimately looking at how you can increase the effectiveness and the efficiency of your agents and your advisors. So if you think about personalization as an investment tool, what's the flip side of that coin? And that's generalization. So if you don't invest in personalization, you're going back to generalization. And that would be treating every customer, every contact, every channel, every intent with the same approach. So you're not making sure that you're understanding the sentiment or the intent behind each interaction, or indeed understanding the status of the customer, the value, but also their vulnerability status, for example, or the extra care that they may need, or their previous contact history, or the challenges that they've had, to be able to make sure that you are routing those tickets, routing those conversations to the right skilled agent, whether that be an AI agent or a human agent. So the personalization in that front will always be about getting the right outcome for the customer as quickly as possible, as effectively as possible, and in the channel of their choosing. And you're able to do that because you've used a level of AI in the background to be able to identify that intent and prioritize and route accordingly. And that gives a great benefit, gives a great outcome for the customer, but also it gives a great outcome for the agent because they've got the right type of activity that they know they have the skills and the training to be able to deliver to. And then commercially, it also means that your return on your investment, for investing in those prioritization strategies, reaps rewards on those 4 pillars I mentioned to start off with. So that would be my suggestion and my approach to doing that.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask to remind us of the 4 pillars again, just so we can capture this.
The 4 pillars are increasing customer lifetime value.
Yeah.
They are reducing customer churn, obviously.
Yeah.
They are about ensuring that you are optimizing your contact model, that be in terms of channel and need, and being where your customers are and where you need them to be. But also, and I would say probably this is one of the most important to consider, is increasing your agent efficiency, but also crucially their effectiveness.
Yeah, so that's all like super clear business case stuff, isn't it? And if you can put that into the context of, that's the kind of what the CFO needs to hear about, isn't it? But from the customer's point of view, being able to save time by not having the customer have to tell you their complete history every time they speak to someone or get passed around, right? From their point of view, being able to recognize where they're already up to in the conversation. I can see we've already, this has happened so far.
Yeah.
This is where we're up to now. Be able to like really quickly do that recap. Of course, that's a faster call. That's less resource being used, but it's way better for the customer.
Absolutely.
At the same time, isn't it? So like those metrics and KPIs that we're looking for from a commercial perspective, that's what the outcomes we need to be pitching for when we're asking for investment. But what that's made up of is super important, isn't it? Because you could reduce call handling time in lots of different ways, which are not good for customers. But here's ways that we can actually make things better for the customer and drive those benefits as well. So I don't know if anyone else is wondering this, but painting the picture of what personalization that builds loyalty actually looks like in practice, I'm going to ask Katie to paint that picture for us so we can all get onto the same page of, we've talked about creepy, we've talked about cool, but what does it look like? What should we be aiming for?
Yeah. And I think that Emily had touched on a lot of this a little bit earlier, but you really do need to have a very deep understanding of your customer. We do live in a sea full of data today, and you actually need to use it. So it's understanding the purchase history, the browsing patterns, your feedback to anticipate the needs, to offer relevant solutions before the customers are even asking. So a really great example of a company who does this today is Netflix. They keep all of your shows that you're watching up in one file. They create show suggestions for you. And not only similar to what you've been watching today, but they also align it to your evolving tastes over time. Every single company should be doing this right now. And another big content would be the content aware interactions. So adjusting your messaging based on your timing, your location, or even your stage of life. One example of something that had happened to me that was a very negative experience was I was using a fitness app that I've been using for years and years and years. And I was 9 months pregnant, and they were sending me emails and notifications about 90-minute high interval training classes that I would never be taking. So they had all of the statistics, they had the data, they had it right there at their fingertips, and they weren't even utilizing it. So they were sending me a message that didn't even match where I was at with my stage of life. And that's something that we can control today.
Yeah, that's like creepy, cool, and then there's annoying. There's another category here, isn't there? So, like,
Very annoying.
I hate it. My supermarket, a very loyal customer, have my loyalty card, swipe it every time. And I do not have a dog, but when it offers me dog food vouchers to try to get me to cross-sell into another category, I do not even have a dog. I buy cat food very regularly because I love my cat. Talk to me about cat insurance, talk to me about like points off that get me a discount off my next purchase if I buy a bigger box of the cat food or something. But don't offer me dog food just because that the algorithm has told you maybe that's a cross-sell opportunity within a category. So okay, so we've got creepy, cool, and just annoying. And I just had to call out Kate's comment. I know it already flashed up on the screen, but she was just saying how she loves how you ladies have so many great bite-sized insights and often in a very few succinct points, and we could write a whole report based on these. I have to agree. It is the power of women in CX sharing, and so many great examples and case studies already, right? Like super memorable ones as well. So if we move on from this section then and start to think about harnessing AI to deepen relationships, we've got a bit of insight from the Core Miner report that says organizations are using AI for personalization. 43% that responded said they were doing that. 43% are identifying loyalty drivers and 40% are predicting behaviors. But AI is also freeing frontline employees by handling repetitive tasks and enabling more meaningful interactions. So if execution is the challenge, how do we use AI to properly deepen relationships and move from intent to impact? And Kate, I'm going to stay with you on this one because it feels like you've got a good techie view on this. On where do you see AI-driven personalization actually strengthening these relationships? I think, again, the value we're bringing here is these kind of real evidence examples, these kind of use cases that are helpful to the audience. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I can give another example. So in my experience, Amazon has absolutely been crushing the personalization game. Mm-hmm. They're analyzing absolutely everything, your browsing history, your purchase patterns, and even seasonal trends in order to suggest things that you genuinely want or that you need. And it's going to be reducing your search efforts. And that builds trust that the platform actually understands your customer. It's encouraging repeat use at the same time, and it works. But why does it work? Because the AI personalization moves beyond the generic marketing, and it's actually anticipating needs, reducing the friction, and showing the customers that the brand is actually recognizing and valuing them individually. And it's that emotional tie to what's actually going to be strengthening the relationship over time.
Nice. Just another story popped into the chat there from Jessica. It can also be creepy when it's done well too. When she was just 8 weeks pregnant, nobody knew apart from her and her husband. Target sent her a get ready for the baby catalogue flyer in the mail. And at that point, she'd not purchased anything, but leveraged the search history since learning she was pregnant to target her with marketing. Oh yeah, that is creepy. But technically very well done using all of the systems available, but outcome wise, definitely got some creep points there. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing that one. I was just thinking about the Netflix example again, and I get this with YouTube. Do you watch YouTube Shorts? Do you ever like find yourself just doom scrolling and watching stuff? That I don't like the fact that it like knows me so well, and I wouldn't consider myself to be somebody that has such a base level of watching things like true crime. But it pops up. Do you want to watch this? Do you want to watch this? But that's like a laughing at myself. But it gives you the reality, doesn't it? And I think I'm like a vampire horror obsessed fanatic if I look at my Netflix recommendations because I watch too many vampire dramas from the 1990s. Anyway, I digress. So building on from that, what is the line then? Like, where do we how can leaders push for some more ethics around this and innovative uses that go beyond efficiency and actually deepen loyalty? Because the gimmicky things seem to be very popular, don't they? We can do this really cool thing, but does it really have a value to the end user within it? How do we push for stuff that actually makes a bigger difference? Siobhan, sorry, I got like
that's okay.
I did myself. Yeah, no, that is exactly what it is.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because we look at things from, you can personalize as much as you like to the nth degree. You know, a customer can feel that they are so far seen that the computer knows more about them than their own mother, for example. But it's all well and good having that level of insight. But if you don't have your agent suitably empowered to be able to have meaningful conversations, then you're going to waste that opportunity to drive real value from that. And so I think from when we're looking at how we're applying AI from a personalization perspective at customers, we all need to look inwardly on how we apply that from how we're taking care of agents to allow them to have those meaningful conversations. And you'll know, as you know, a lot of us all experienced starting off as agents on the phones many years ago. When you're having quality checking, you know, 4 interactions a month, you're either really lucky or really unlucky as to how they were scored. When you're using AI, you can make sure that you are focusing on the outliers, so you can really home in on that training and coaching. The output of that is when you've got personalized training to an agent that is driven out of the insight that you have from applying AI onto the coaching and the quality monitoring. That means that they have a bedrock of comfort in the skills that they've acquired and the way they've been coached and the way they've been developed to allow them to have meaningful conversations that are often more complex because the transactional stuff's been automated, with a customer who is presented to them with a context and a history that's very bespoke and relevant to their history, you know, their personal history, their needs, their wants, what particular products they may have expressed an interest in, where they may have had a really negative experience in the past, or indeed where they are a customer that's probably having quite an emotional engagement. So there could be somebody who's a parent, for example. So knowing that the agent who is talking to that customer can see that interaction, can see that they've had 3 restless nights trying to get a baby feeding machine to work, but the agent is reassured from their own personalization experience that the training coaching they've had has allowed them to listen to the conversation, to see the messaging, to see the summarization presented to them on the screen in front of them, so that they can be very clear on what the intent and the sentiment is of that customer. But they can also be more focused on resolving and anticipating future questions too. So you've got a complete 360 application of AI from a personalization perspective in both the agent experience and the customer experience, which ultimately results in greater empowerment for the agent and a better outcome for the customer. So that's where I'm really excited on the way that AI is being leveraged in our businesses and for our clients.
Interesting. And apologies, I was like laughing in the middle of what you were saying because you were saying something very serious, but it was just when Anu's comment came up about Zara and Vinted knowing what she likes wearing while she's doom scrolling. She's getting the gardening and power washing videos. That made me giggle too. So coming back to the retailers then, because I don't know about you, but from all my years working in big businesses, where most of the technology stuff was being driven either by IT or marketing, what is the risk if we don't try and have any claim on this space and just leave AI-led personalization solely to IT and marketing? What is the risk that we might be running into? So Emily, I'm going to come to you first on that one, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really great question. And let's be clear, like IT and marketing obviously have a place in this. They have robust data sets
we're not
that we need. Like, we know that's the
we love marketing, we love IT.
But I think what it ultimately comes down to, at least in my mind, is like goal and orientations, right? I think marketing, your goal is around conversion. It's making sure you're driving that sale. You're making sure you bring in the customers, which is a great goal. But when you're thinking about the longevity of personalization across a journey, the goal isn't just to get it right once. It's to continuously get it right. And so really making sure when we think about that impact, going back to, I think, what both Katie and Siobhan have alluded to, part of this is about building trust and empathy. And those are very different goals and have very different success measures than conversion or system integrity or efficiencies. It's really about saying, like, do we know our customers? Do they feel comfortable with us? Do they trust that we have their best interest in hand? And so when I think about the right team to lead that type of effort and make sure we're measuring that success, I mean, CX feels much more well-positioned to really understand that context and drive towards those solutions than maybe other partners. And so I think we really need to start shifting the conversation. We think about success for AI personalization from a compliance and like conversion conversation to do customers feel safe? Do they feel valued? And how do we measure that successfully?
We're going to definitely dive further into that in our final section. But Carolina, is there anything you'd add to that?
I think both Siobhan's and Emily's points are really super interesting. And you know, if we don't step in as CX leaders, AI-led personalization will become either too technical or too tactical. So when IT drives it, experiences are efficient, but they're going to be emotionally flat or non-existing, right? But when marketing drives it, to your point, Emily, they can be very loud and relevant, but inconsistent and maybe quite shallow. So this is, you know, when we talk about this at H&M, we say that like AI without a soul is just noise. Because you want to make sure that whatever AI agent you're using, that agent understands you, not only from your physical needs perspective or logical needs perspective, but also from your emotional perspective and your relevance perspective and all of those sides, right? And I think like as CX leaders, our role is to bring the human perspective into this. It's about empathy, it's about storytelling, it's about coherence, ensuring that personalization isn't just something that is happening or, you know, on a flat and cold level, but actually feels right. Because it's like having a best friend, right? You want to get their input, but you want to get it in a nice and you know, sociable way. You don't want to get it in a flat and like, oh, I don't like your dress or whatever it is we're talking about. And look at Zalando, right? For example, they've automated 70% of their campaign imagery with AI, which is incredibly fast. But if it's not grounded in the experience design, it risks sameness. So it becomes too consistent. It becomes flat. It becomes unrelatable. So I think the risk isn't in inefficiency when it comes to AI. The risk is invisibility. Because if we take it too far, if it's not emotionally connectable, it's too optimized and you just forget about it. You're just like, yeah, whatever. And our job, in this trade is to make sure that AI enhances the human connection, not replaces it.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads us into our final area of debate, which is about trust governance and the human touch. And again, just recording some of the insights from the latest Core Miner Trends report is that this is scary. 67% of organizations are implementing AI without proper governance. And the report flagged that particular concerns are on the rise. One is about misinformation, with 52% saying that's a big concern. And as we've mentioned multiple times now, compliance, and particularly in sectors like financial services, the less governance is increasing that risk of some big fundamental mistakes happening. But trust is going to be the most essential thing, right? If we're looking for personalization to drive loyalty. So obviously this power is increasing. The responsibility that comes with that now is also increasing. And if AI is about personalization at scale, how the hell are we going to manage to balance innovation with trust? So Carolina, stay with you on this one. How do you think we can balance the scale of AI with the trust customers expect from personalized experiences and don't become creepy or annoying?
Well, I have all the answers. No, I do not. But I think I'm going to continue on the same theme, right? Like for me, AI, it needs to be humanly guided. The things that some AI agents do really, really well is that they're not intrusive. They give you input when you ask for it, like for example, ChatGPT. And I think the creepiness starts when an AI agent, like some of you described, being pregnant and so forth, gives you information that you did not ask for. Right? It obtains information about you that is relevant, but that creeps you out because you actually didn't actively participate in asking for it. So we use machines for what they're great at: speed, prediction, and scale, and so on. But we need to keep humans in charge of the empathy and the ethics and the meaning of that. I often say internally when we talk about it here at H&M, you can't out-hack trust. You have to earn it, right? So there is something about how do we interact with these AIs versus how much do we push personalization and so forth. I don't want to relinquish control over my life. I don't want AI to start thinking for me, but I want it as a best friend to support me whenever I need that support. And if we over-automate, we lose the authenticity. If we avoid AI, we lose the relevance. And I think the balance sits in the partnership, like humans training machines, not the other way around. And AI can scale empathy, but only if we as humans and CX leaders stay in control of the meaning behind every interaction, right? I truly believe in that because I find AI a little bit frightening, but at the same time, super cool, right? I use it on a daily basis and it helps me so much in my life. But at the same time, I had a conversation with a colleague today and he said, I kind of stopped thinking for myself. So I just rely on ChatGPT to give me all the answers. And that takes away all of my creativity. And that's where we do not want to end up.
Yeah. No, totally. And I was just thinking the same thing, actually. And I've ended up making some mistakes because I've not double checked something that I've had a bit of help from ChatGPT on, and I've not gone back and really questioned, is this actually what I meant to say? And then I've come to use it and been like, no, this is not what I intended at all. So yeah, definitely need that human in the loop. Humans designing this in the first place to have principles around how it behaves and how it treats people and how it interprets human emotions like empathy. And I think Siobhan said it at the start, right? The more we automate, the more complex the scenarios that humans are going to be handling, because AI can't do that yet. But how can we really ensure that those pathways are kept super clear and that the agents who are now having this bigger responsibility of probably a harder job, right? Having to just deal with really complicated maybe emotional issues are feeling super well supported and enabled to do some of those recall aspects without having to detract from the. I'm sorry, someone going to say something? I felt like there was going to be some additions there. No. Siobhan, I already tried to ask you this question, but I asked it too early. If you could define that line between creepy overreach, or Katie, both of you, I'd love to hear from you on this one. Where is that line between useful personalization? I can't even say the words now. Useful personalization and creepy overreach. Where would you say that it kind of falls? Because it sounds like from the audience, it's different for everybody.
I think that's the important thing to remember. It is different for everybody. And the way that you measure people's responses to that level of personalization and AI is probably even more important when you take those learnings from those measured responses and reapply them to how you expand your AI strategy. So don't just assume that everybody wants to be handled in the same way, or everybody will have the same emotions at the same situation in their lives, because humans are complex, as we know, and frustrating, and very difficult to predict. So the goal isn't about automation as much as you can. I think the goal is about taking the level of AI and understanding what intelligence that gives you to be able to feed that back into where you do decide to personalize and where you don't, and constantly reviewing it and constantly revisiting it and making sure that you are even using AI as your measuring tool. So, you can measure itself to some degree, measuring the sentiment and the output.
Yeah, I see it everywhere now. Like, was this useful? It is trying to get feedback, isn't it? Like, was this actually what you meant? Like, trying to learn from. But is this going to be like the new survey fatigue? Checking that AI is actually useful? Is this the new problem we're going to have? Instead of talking about NPS in a few years' time, we're going to be talking about AI feedback.
But I think we discussed NPS and its relevance to death, didn't we, at the Unconference in Berlin? I think it's very much about using analysis and sentiment analysis, excuse me, to be able to start to measure the experience, because people will give thumbs up or thumbs down, or a score of 1 to 5, or whatever it might be.
There's no context.
But it's there's no context, and it's more about what they don't say than what they do say.
Yeah. So being able to listen creepily and interpret that with unsolicited feedback. Katie, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with all of it. I think it's really when it stops feeling helpful and it starts feeling intrusive. So ensuring that we have that human in the loop constantly, that's where we kind of stay away from the creepy and we stay near the cool.
Nice. So audience, we're getting near the end now. I've got one more question for Emily and then we're going to do a wrap up. But have you thought of any questions you'd like to ask the audience? So far, I can see I've only had one put forward from my team in the background. So if you want to get your questions ready, and we'll be ready to ask those in just a couple of minutes. So to bring us home then, Emily, what role do you think women in CX can play in ensuring AI governance frameworks put customer trust and ethics at the center of everything? Because it is going to take real effort now, isn't it? And ownership and accountability, and us stepping over the breach a bit and claiming some space to say, I want to have a say in this, rather than letting it roll on. What can we do?
Yeah, I think it's a really big question. And I think for me, what I think comes to mind is really taking a spot in the spotlight to say, how do we redefine what responsible AI is, right? There's the basics of making sure we do bias checks and making sure we've thought about those compliance things that I think there is room and needed women voices. But I think there's even a step further on saying, how do we really make trust measurable? We've talked a lot today about that feeling of trust and what does it mean? And what comes to mind for me when I think about trust is transparency. It's about consent. It's about comfort. And how do we get to a place where we can actually measure those and use those as our yardstick for success? I think women especially are well equipped to bring this forward, because we have that emotional intelligence. We talk this language. We can feel that there isn't just a compliance need. And so when we think about transparency, I start thinking about like how and when we use it should be upfront for our customers. They should understand why we're seeking this information, how we're using this information. There is a consent where they can decide what information we use, and they know that they have choice. And there's comfort where you can actually set preferences, because we just talked about creepy is different for different people. So that comfort level, that yardstick's going to be different. And funnily enough, I just had a really great example of this happen to me last night. I received an email, and it's one of those, at first I thought it was one of those very common, try to get me to buy something else from somebody I've bought something from before emails. But I noticed that they used a headline immediately that said, "We want to hear from you." And I was like, okay, are you just giving me a survey? And I happened to open it, and it actually was for my son. I buy these toys called Slumberkins. For anyone who's familiar with them, they are stuffed animals that help with emotional intelligence. We're doing all the things with a 4-year-old, trying to just cultivate any semblance of emotional control right now. But it wasn't just a marketing email. It was actually saying, hey, we know we send you a lot of emails. We also recognize we could do better. And so they said, if you would have the time, we would love to learn a little bit more about you as a person and what you need from us. And this was really great timing because we don't really need more product from them. We have the stuffed animals that we want to use. But what they also offer is a newsletter for parents. They also offer activities for kids based on different ages. And so I actually went to the survey, and they had clear questions like, what's your role? And not just parent, but are you a caregiver? Are you a gift giver? Are you a family friend? Are you a pediatrician, right? Like, what's your role in this space in helping children regulate their emotions? Does your child have special needs of any sort? So are you going to have different emotional challenges based on your age group? Would you like to share how old your child is so we can make sure it's relevant? Do you want parenting newsletters? Those are all really core choices, and they were very transparent. They let me have the comfort and control of how much information I wanted, and it was all with consent. And so I happily gave them all of this information because that actually made it so like I get less marketing emails on new product and a lot more content that helps me with the journey with the products I already have.
And Kat's asking, who is this brand?
Yes, it's called Slumberkins. They are very cute little stuffed animals that all have an emotional intelligence focus for each one. So,
wow. And that really approach to customer service or experience is in line with what their brand stands for, right? The way in which they've done that with transparency and openness, and they're selling a product that's about encouraging those kinds of skills in emotional intelligence within children. I really like that. That's like a really consistent story, isn't it? What we're selling, yes, we actually behave that way towards our customers as well. And it is interesting, isn't it, about like the ways in which we're going to need to engage customers more in choosing their experience and levels of personalization, or like involving them in co-designing it somehow. And today it's quite rigid, isn't rigid, that's the right word, but it's quite a blunt instrument to ask a survey, give us this data, and in return we're going to give you better personalization. And yeah, interesting maybe how technology is going to shape different ways in which we're able to listen to understand that as well in the future. So we've got a couple of questions coming up in the chat already, and before we do that, I think I'd just like us to make sure we've got a really nice recap here. If there was like one piece of advice that you could give to women in CX on how to own the space of AI-powered personalization and loyalty in the year ahead, what would it be? So Carolina, I'll start with you. Just like one big piece of advice or takeaway, because you've had so many, and I need your 4 again. Is it the 4? Is it the 3? Think about the structures, the systems, and
it's the structure, it's the systems, and the speed. And I think what you left off with, Emily, is really important. Giving back control. I think, and not control to the enterprise you work for, or to making money of it, but giving back control to the person you're trying to interact with. And I think we all want to have that human interaction. And sometimes when it's pushed down our throats, we kind of go like, no, this is not for me. And I think many brands and many companies would benefit tremendously from being a little bit more curious. I mean, it doesn't take long to answer those questions that you kind of said, Emily, that you were asked, and it gives so much more. And Claire, you might not be getting recommendations on dog food when you don't have a dog and stuff like that, right? I think that benefits quite a lot. Being a little bit curious about the space you're in and what kind of audience you have is really, really important, and incorporating that into what you need to do with AI, or try to do with AI.
Nice. Oh, and Emily, and just saw your comment there that Slumberkins is a woman-led company. Well, there we go then. That makes sense. Emily, what's your piece of advice or takeaway?
So I am an ops girl at heart. I started in HR operations and now I'm journey ops. So for me, it really does come down to like, how do we truly operationalize measuring success of our efforts, right? So it comes back down to that measuring trust, like what gets measured gets done. So I think we really need to lean heavily into how do we know we've done well and making sure that's part of the conversation early on and getting ahead of just the idea that automation, conversion, that those are success measures. Because if we keep doing that, we're going to have, I think we've all talked about this, like irrelevant or flat feeling automation at scale and AI personalization at scale. So we really, really need to start leaning into defining and taking space in creating that definition of what does trust look like and how do we define success.
Oh, I love that. Maybe that's a mission for the Women in CX Inner Circle to start to define that. I think we could, maybe just create a framework for how that might be able to look in the future. I'm going to put that one down on my pad. I was just going to say, has anyone heard of Equitas? It's this new piece of software. It's been launched in Europe that allows you to basically put through any of like your prompts, your scripts. You can test basically all of the AI that you're putting out there, not just from a compliance point of view, from a bias and inclusion point of view. Audience, I wrote an article about this. I've only launched it in the Inner Circle community at the moment, but I'm going to be sharing it externally later this month. So I'll make sure everyone who's on this call today gets a copy of that, because there are new tools now, aren't there? Being designed by women. That was by women in AI specifically. They've collaborated on this project to create a tool that's open source that anybody can use to not just do the policy side, but to really rigorously check for bias and exclusion in like how you're measuring employees, even in terms of QA. That was an example we talked about today, wasn't it? Or like penalizing people because their accent aren't as easy to understand. For me, I think that's like a big step forward. I'd love to think, can CX create something like that, a set of design principles or guides that we can work to build on these kinds of AI generated tools to do that testing and to help with that in the future. So Katie, you're up next. What's your reflection?
Yeah, thank you. I think, everybody kind of covered a lot of what I was going to say anyways, but my advice would be just to keep the conversation around how the data is used to create genuine emotion connections, not just transactions. We really need to focus on combining your CX experience with AI tools to design experience that feel personal, respectful, and inclusive, because that's where your real loyalty is going to be built.
Love that. I wish it's not Zoom. I would have my little heart emojis going on my screen now. I really love that. That's a really powerful takeaway as well. We'll take that as a soundbite as well. And Siobhan, what's your wrap up?
Mine would be, you don't have to do everything all at once. You don't have to buy all the toys in the toy shop and deploy them all immediately. I would start slowly. Start with your customer. Start with a couple of customer journeys, define those, map those, refine them, measure them, and then once you're comfortable that you have the right tools in place to continue to move those along the nuanced journey as the customers are telling you that's what they need, then start to move on to different customer journeys. So start small, measure, refine.
Cool. And that's another point for journey ops, isn't it? And thinking about journey management and designing and thinking from the customer's journey perspective rather than the silos again. Yeah. So I think we've got time for one, maybe even two questions. And we've got one from Kate in here and one from Anu. So as soon as Kate asked hers first, Siobhan was in Berlin with us for the Unconference last week. And this came up, didn't it, on the panel we did with Sandra Thompson. But Kate's question is, do any of you measure customers' personality, e.g., Big Five personality model, or the psychological differences to personalize simple things, even like linguistics of chatbots or product recommendations? Is that like a personality assessment level that anybody is using, or is anybody aware of being used? I know Sandra Thompson told us about an example in Berlin, but ladies, is that something that's come up for you?
I think that's the nirvana. And I remember Sandra speaking about that, how you personalize the tone based on the brand tone of voice or the company tone of voice, which is being done to the customer, and less so at the moment as to the customer preferential tone of voice that they wish to be engaged or interacted with. So I have to say the answer to that from my point of view is no, not yet.
Yeah. But Kate, did you leave a link in the chat saying that you had a piece of research or an article or a resource that you were sharing with the community about that? If so, please feel free to reshare it in the chat now, just in case anybody missed it. Yes, Kate's saying she's done projects for that, like brands, and that's why she asked. Yeah, Kate, if you've got a resource that you'd like to share, please do share that in the chat. But yeah, Sandra Thompson definitely talked about that. It's something we probably need to investigate further. And then Anu asked, are there companies who've combined AI, trust, empathy, and CX in a relevant way, and especially when it comes to regulated or traditional businesses, or nowadays that pretty much every business is regulated? Does any kind of case study example stand out to anybody of where that's been done well? Everyone's shaking their heads. Ooh.
Well, I think Nike is doing an okay job in attempting that, but they are not there yet, I think. And I think unless we start measuring the personality of our customers, it's going to be very, very hard, because we are, I mean, all big enterprises are assuming that there are certain target customers that we are targeting and they have these characteristics, yada, yada, yada. But it's not as simple, right? Because even though I'm a mother, I might not be interested in the same things as Emily is, or Shaban, or whoever, right? So there is something around values that is not measured and not incorporated into the AI sphere today. And very truthfully, I think we're quite far away from that. I mean, at H&M, we're looking at predictability of trends, but we're not looking on predictability of what people are expecting to have as trends, right? So there's a difference there. There's a trend upcoming because some influencer is, saying this and that about clothes or shoes or whatever, but it not necessarily resonates to everyone. It resonates to a specific group, but not to the rest of the community. So we're far from that. I don't know if you ladies agree with me, but that's my opinion, at least.
Feel free to chime in if anyone's got a different opinion.
I think we're doing some of this today. So what we're able to do for the end customers today is, if they've had a very difficult interaction with an agent on the phone or anything like that, we're able to send them a direct outreach immediately after the call concludes, just to say something as simple as, hey, I'm so sorry you had a very difficult interaction today. Please see this. Please let me know, your next available time. I would like to call you myself as the site manager, or as somebody in operations, or anything like that. I want to hear your voice and your feedback directly. So I do think that it is new. And are people utilizing it? Yes. Are people utilizing it to its full potential right now? Probably not. But I would say we're starting to.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much all we've got time for now. We're coming up to 1 minute left to go. I guess my reflections on this is, like, there have been so many solid takeaways, but what it really is coming back down to is the fact that, like, at the moment, all of this is just a bit of a big experiment, isn't it? Like, use cases are being developed, some stuff's landing, some stuff's not. MIT told us 95% of implementations are failing full stop, and they're never seeing the light of day, because they've not answered a problem that there's got an actual need behind it in the first place, or it's just been unsuccessfully deployed and therefore just shelved and put away. But we know, as individuals, we're all using AI in some way, aren't we, on a day-to-day basis, just to help with our own lives now, so that there is absolutely, it's not going away. And I think the difference between it being cool or creepy / annoying is always going to be in design, isn't it? Right? So what are we actually doing this for in the first place? What are the use cases we're creating to use it? How do we actually design and teach and train any AI that is going to interact with our customers or our colleagues? And I don't think anybody has the answers yet, and I don't think anybody is absolutely nailing it. There are some really cool demonstrations of impact and commercial outcome, particularly in the marketing division or automation, leading to reduced costs. But I just don't think there are that many great examples just yet of being able to create that kind of like human interaction that maybe we will just always need humans to do, but who am I to say that? So this is not the last time we'll be talking about this. We've got even more sessions delving deeper into this topic of AI, talking about how women can play a more central role in driving that. And I am personally determined that our community, our wider community of women in CX, need to have this voice. We need to keep women at the centre of this, and we need to keep talking about it and sharing our insights and thoughts. So huge thank you to our panelists today. You've been amazing. A round of applause. And a huge thanks to our audience who have been super engaged, chatting all the way through, giving their thoughts and opinions as well. Ladies and gentlemen out there, it's been fabulous to host you today too. So without further ado, we're going to say goodbye for this time, but we'll be back in January with our next Women in CX Talks Trends panel debate. Bye for now, everybody. Take care.